In the early 1990s, a cameraman from CBS News stood on a slope in northern China and pointed his lens at something he could barely process. The ground beneath him was yellow, not golden, not amber, but the pale, sick yellow of soil stripped down to nothing. Gullies the size of city blocks had been carved into the hillsides by rain. The river below ran the color of rust. Workers with hand tools were cutting terraces into near vertical slopes, one ledge at a time, and the most controversial instruction anyone had received was not to plant more trees. It was to stop farming. Within 20 years, satellites would detect something from orbit that looked impossible. That cameraman was John D. Liu. He had no ecology training, no conservation background, no scientific agenda. He had a camera and a deadline. He was there to document a World Bank development project in the Loess Plateau, a region most people in the West had never heard of and could not have found on a map. He expected to file a few minutes of footage and move on. Instead, he kept coming back. For 30 years, he kept coming back. And the reason he kept coming back is the same reason this story matters. What happened on that plateau should not have been possible. But before we get to what happened, we need to understand what it actually was. The Loess Plateau sits across parts of Shanxi, Gansu, and surrounding provinces in north-central China. It covers roughly 640,000 square kilometers, an area larger than France. And by the time Liu arrived with his camera, it had been losing topsoil for over 2,000 years. Not centuries of gradual wear. 2,000 years of continuous farming, continuous grazing, and continuous cutting on slopes that were too steep to hold soil against rain. Each generation inherited a slightly more degraded version of the land than the generation before. And because the decline was slow enough that no single lifetime could witness the full arc, each generation accepted what they saw as normal. The barren yellow landscape was not ancient. It was not geological destiny. It was the result of accumulated human pressure so old that people had simply forgotten it had ever looked different. That is the trap, not the erosion itself, the forgetting. The Yellow River, which drains the plateau, carried the evidence downstream in plain sight. The river's famous color, the color that gave it its name, came from suspended sediment. Soil that used to be on the hillsides was now moving through the water column, settling in riverbeds, filling reservoirs, creating floods in lowland communities that had nothing to do with the plateau. By the 20th century, the Loess Plateau was contributing roughly 90% of the Yellow River's sediment load. The river was not a river anymore. It was a slow, brown evacuation of a landscape eating itself alive. If you had shown a hydrologist this data in 1990 and asked what it would take to reverse it, the answer would have involved numbers with a lot of zeros. Massive re-engineering, decades of industrial-scale planting, international funding at a scale most governments would reject. The plateau was listed among the most severely degraded landscapes on Earth. That was not a metaphor, it was a technical classification. And the people who lived there, millions of people, were among the poorest in China, farming slopes so steep that the soil they planted on today would be partially gone by the time the crop came up. China had already tried the obvious answer. For decades, government programs had focused on tree planting. Plant enough trees and the roots will hold the soil. That is the logic. It is intuitive, it is almost right, and it mostly failed. Wrong species planted in the wrong locations. No fencing to keep grazing animals out. No enforcement of changed land use on the slopes. The seedlings appeared, and within a season, animals had eaten them, or the soil beneath them had slipped anyway because the underlying pressure, farming, grazing, cutting, had never stopped. The land reverted. The gullies kept growing. The river kept turning brown. Here is what the tree planting programs had missed. You cannot stabilize a slope if you are still destabilizing it. You cannot grow vegetation that holds water if the ground is being continuously broken before it can establish. The problem was not a shortage of trees. The problem was a shortage of time without pressure. And that distinction between fixing a landscape and stopping the destruction of it turned out to be the entire difference between failure and the largest ecological recovery of this scale in modern history. The World Bank project that Liu was sent to film operated on a different set of assumptions. The core logic was almost embarrassingly simple. Terrace. The steep slopes so rain slows down and soaks in instead of running off and pulling soil with it. Fence off degraded areas from grazing animals. Redirect farming toward flatter land where it could actually be sustained. Stop cutting woody vegetation on the hillsides. And then, critically, do not plant trees across the whole plateau and call it done. Let the land reveal what it already had stored in its seed bank, its root systems, and its soil biology. Give recovery a foothold where it needed help. Then stop breaking what was trying to grow. When rain hits a bare, steep slope, it moves fast. It picks up loose particles, carries them downhill, cuts grooves that become channels that become gullies. There is no time for infiltration. The water is gone before the ground can absorb it, and it takes the ground with it. Now put a terrace on that slope, a flat ledge cut into the hillside. The water slows. It spreads. It has time to soak in. The slope below the terrace receives less runoff. The soil begins to stabilize. Within a single growing season, without any planting at all, plants start to appear. Not planted, not seeded, just returning because the seeds were already there. The root systems were already there. The biological potential was already there. The one thing that had been preventing recovery was the one thing that had been continuous for 2,000 years. The land was not dead. It had never been dead. It had just never been left alone long enough to prove it. Liu filmed it happening, and he did not believe it at first. Not fully. He was a cameraman. He was looking for a story about development economics, about foreign aid, about a modest project in a remote region. What he was watching instead was succession happening at visible speed on slopes that scientists had categorized as near permanently damaged. Plants appearing in year one. Shrubs coming in behind them. Springs beginning to push water up through gully floors where water had not surfaced in living memory. And not just in the areas directly terraced or fenced. The recovery was spreading into zones the project had not touched, because stabilizing one area changed the hydrology of the ground around it, which changed what could grow there, which changed what arrived next. He came back the following year. The change was larger. He came back again. Larger still. He started asking different questions. Not the questions of a journalist meeting a deadline, but the questions of someone who had watched an assumption collapse in real time. There was resistance, of course. The early years of the project were not clean. Farmers who had been told they could no longer use the steepest slopes lost short-term income. Some fences were cut. Some animals were grazed through protected areas anyway. The zones where pressure continued showed modest or no recovery. The zones where the policy was actually enforced showed something different, and that created a painful clarity. The bottleneck was not technical. The soil was capable of recovering, the seeds were capable of germinating, the slopes were capable of holding water. The bottleneck was whether the people living on the land could be supported through a transition that asked them to stop doing what they had always done long enough for the land to respond. That is harder than cutting terraces. It required compensation programs, alternative livelihood development, community relocation support in some areas, and sustained government enforcement over years and then decades. This was not a nature documentary moment. It was an enormous social and political undertaking wrapped inside an ecological one, and that is exactly the part that made it work. By the late 1990s, the pattern was undeniable in the areas where the program had been enforced. The data that eventually came from satellite monitoring showed vegetation cover on the plateau rising from roughly 32% in 1999 to 64% by 2019. That number deserves a moment. Not 32 to 40. Not an incremental improvement measured in the margins. Roughly doubled on a landscape that had been losing ground for 2,000 years, in 20 years. Peer-reviewed research published in Communications, Earth and Environment, part of the Nature portfolio, documented the change using satellite imagery. This was not a local claim. It was not a government press release. It was remote sensing data independently verified. The Yellow River's sediment load began to drop. The color began to change. The physical proof of the plateau's transformation was visible in the downstream behavior of one of China's most important rivers. Liu kept filming. He had become something different from what he arrived as, not a journalist on assignment, but a documentarian with a 30-year longitudinal record of the same hillsides changing beneath the same sky. In his accounts of this period, he has described realizing that what he was watching was not a China story. It was a proof of concept story. The Loess Plateau was demonstrating something that applied to every degraded landscape on Earth, that the gap between a functioning ecosystem and a broken one was not bridged by engineering alone, and that the biological capacity for recovery was often still present in the soil, waiting for the pressure to stop. He took that argument to other continents. He documented degraded landscapes in Ethiopia, Jordan, and elsewhere, using the Loess Plateau as the template, not as a perfect model to copy, but as evidence that recovery at scale was not a fantasy. The lesson was replicable in principle, even where the conditions differed. And then came the part nobody had originally promised. The restoration was designed to hold soil and water. That was the brief. Reduce erosion, lower the sediment load, stabilize slopes, make farming more viable on the sustainable land. Those goals were met. But what the monitoring also began to record, beyond the original metrics, was biodiversity returning in patterns that were not on anyone's original project plan. Wildlife species, pollinator communities, bird populations, plant communities, appearing in areas where modern surveys had no prior record of them. Springs that returned to the surface created wetland conditions in gully floors. Wetland conditions attracted species that had not been present in living memory. The restoration had been aimed at soil and water. It accidentally rebuilt habitat at a scale that nobody had budgeted for. Dust storms that had blanketed cities hundreds of kilometers away began to decrease as the plateau's surface stabilized. Agricultural yields on the properly terraced lower slopes improved as water retention improved. The communities that had been asked to sacrifice short-term land use found that the long-term trade had produced something real. The project that looked like an imposition became something the region had reason to defend. This was not free, it was not effortless. It was not nature working alone while humans watched. It required sustained political commitment across multiple administrations. It required enforcement over decades. It required massive labor. The terracing was done by hand at a scale that took years to complete. It required community compensation programs and alternative livelihood development, without which the social compliance that allowed the land to recover would not have happened. It required a government willing and able to maintain a long-term program against short-term economic pressure. Those conditions are not automatically available everywhere. They were available here, in a specific political and economic context, at a specific historical moment, with a specific scale of commitment. That is not a reason to dismiss what happened. It is a reason to understand it accurately. The lesson of the Loess Plateau is not that nature always recovers if left alone. The lesson is more specific and more powerful. Biological recovery capacity in degraded land is often far more intact than it appears. The land looks dead. The land is not dead. What is missing is not fertility or seeds or root systems or rain. What is missing is the removal of continuous pressure and the addition of conditions that let the recovery engine that is already present begin to run. Give it a foothold, stop breaking it. Protect it long enough for it to cross the threshold where natural succession begins, reinforcing itself. And then the results can be larger than the inputs. That is not magic, it is leverage. John D. Liu eventually stood on slopes he had filmed 30 years earlier and faced ground that looked nothing like what was behind him in his old footage. The yellow gullies had given way to terraced slopes covered in vegetation. Springs that had been dry for generations were moving again. The satellite images showed something visible from orbit, a region that had been brown for centuries, turning green in the span of a human lifetime. He has described this not as a triumph of a particular program, but as evidence of a principle, that the economic value of a functional ecosystem so far exceeds the value of a degraded one, that restoration, even at enormous cost, is rational. But the image that stays is simpler than that. It is the same hillside before and after, the same rain falling on different ground, the same biological engine that was always there, finally given room to run. For 2,000 years, people tried to take more from this land. The land recovered when they finally stopped. There are more stories like this one, places where the thing everyone ignored, dismissed, or wrote off turned out to be the missing piece. If you want us to find the next one, tell us where to look.